Welcome to They Called Me Mental, a Rabble Rousers podcast. We're a group of young adult mental health advocates breaking stigmas and bringing awareness to the reality of life with mental illness. This podcast contains discussions of mental health and substance use. Some topics may be triggering to listeners. Rabble Rousers projects are made possible by community donations to the Coast Foundation Society. Thank you for your support.
Welcome. This is Rabble Rousers podcast. They called me mental. I am your host, Luigi. Today I have with me, thank you for being here, Kwiis. Kwiis is our healing through arts instructor. He is... Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Kwiis?
Hello, everybody. My name is Kwiis Hamilton. I'm 32 years old. I was born in the small village of Xwelmewx in Port Alberni in 1993. My dad is Nuu from the Hopewitchisit tribe, and my mom is Stalo from a place called Lecamel. And Lecamel means the level meeting ground. So that's like the center of where our Stalo and Coast Salish people would meet. The upriver and the downriver people would come to our land, and it was the space where we'd be able to share food, speak about laws, and connect and kind of create connection between communities there. Yeah.
Very nice. How do your roots in Stolo, Coast Salish, and Nuu cultures shape how you see yourself today?
Oh, that's a big one. I was raised Coast Salish. My mom raised me in her territory, just out past Mission, BC, kind of the Mission Chilliwack area.
Okay.
On what people call the Fraser River. For us, Stalo means the people of the river. So we come from that river, and that's how we refer to it. It's the Stalo.
Okay.
So we and the river were one. And I think that understanding of who I am really, really impacts like how I am in the world. Like, just knowing that I'm so connected to that river, to this land, that I belong to this river, that I belong to this land, really informs like how I speak to people, how I walk through the world, like the art that I create. All of it's really tied together. And I like the way I encourage like anybody to create art is to come to it as your full self. Like, don't be embarrassed about anything.
Yeah.
Really, really hold your identity and allow that to be expressed through the things that you create to hopefully move other people, and yeah.
How does art connect you to your mom or your dad?
Oh, my mother was my first art teacher, obviously. We would travel a lot in my childhood. Like, we were constantly on the road. My mom used to work for our nation as a treaty negotiator. Yeah, so are you familiar with treaties?
I'm a little bit familiar with treaties. I have some siblings that are Native.
Okay.
I have some friends that are Native.
So treaties were agreements between Indigenous people and the brand new Canadian government.
Okay.
Canada's only 150 something years old. On the archaeological record here on the western side of what's now known as Canada, our people have been here for at least 14,000 years.
So they belong for sure.
We have this long relationship, this reciprocal and consensual relationship with the land here. And I think that when settlers first came, they saw that relationship we had, and there was a certain understanding that they needed to make an agreement with us as the current caretakers of that land to live peacefully together.
Yeah.
So that there wouldn't be like a war between the new settlers and our people who were here.
Yeah.
So there were a number of treaties. I believe the numbered treaties, the original treaties in Canada, I believe they went up to 8. I'm not 100% on that, but I believe they went up to 8 treaties. And here on the West Coast, our land was never treated. So we're currently living on unceded land in what is now known as British Columbia.
Okay.
And because of that kind of legal, what would I call it? It's like a legal in-between place. Like it's a very gray area.
Yeah.
The current settlements here are happening without having an agreement about land use. So the Canadian government has been pushing us for, since colonization started over 150 years ago, to sign treaties with them. So my mom worked in this department, and she really pushed forward this idea of like, we don't need a treaty because we know that we are the rightful owners of this land. We know that this land belongs to us and we belong to it. And we don't need a piece of paper signed by the Canadian government to legitimize that. So anyways, long story short, we would travel to communities because of this work she was doing. And we'd often eat out at restaurants, like all over the place. And she would, no matter what, she'd ask for a napkin, receipt paper, just a sheet of blank paper, anything she could get.
Yeah.
And any writing utensil she could get, whether it was a pen, pencil crayon, crayons, anything that she could get. And she would draw with us as children, my younger sibling and I.
That's inspiring.
And so that was like really my like introduction to art, was kind of being told stories of our old people, being told stories of my mom's life, and her drawing on napkins and just different like little bits of paper while we were eating out during our travels, doing political and legal work for our nation.
Right.
Yeah, and she traveled us around because she wanted to speak to other nations about that understanding of not needing a treaty to legitimize ourselves because we're already legitimate. Our laws are already legitimate. So
your mother seems like one of those very radical characters, and I think you told me she was kicked off the reserve for calling out corruption within the reserve.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
So it's not even just Canadians and the settlers that it happens within your own.
I think there's a really deep connection between band councils and the Canadian state.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to colonization, and still now, we have different legitimate legal standings within our communities.
Mm.
So, like in our communities, there's heads of families.
Yeah.
Sometimes referred to as chiefs, sometimes referred to as like the head of a house.
Yeah.
And these people, they make decisions with and for our communities, our families, our houses, our clans. And they will never make a decision without consulting our people and our families and our houses and our clans. They will never make a decision unilaterally.
Yeah.
And these people are raised from their childhood, like to be leaders, to be very empathetic, to be very caring, to be very generous. And so these ways of holding ourselves, of showing our laws, of enacting our laws, were made illegal by the Canadian state. And band councils were actually put into place over top of our traditional leadership and law systems.
Oh, wow.
So the chief and council system that my mom saw and called out corruption in was put in place by the Canadian state.
Okay.
So they are funded by tax dollars and by I think it's, what is it called? There's money that has been set aside to fund our people that was made from the resources from our land.
Yeah.
I actually misspoke earlier because we don't get tax funding directly from people who pay taxes. We have a trust fund. That's what it's called. That trust fund was put in place when the Canadian government was created. And the money that was put into that trust was made directly from the theft of our land and our resources, the appropriation of our...
So it looks like they're trying to better something, correct something where they went wrong, but really they're just giving back what you already...
tiny little,
like literally not even all, exactly, not even all of it.
1% of 1% of 1% of what the value of our resources and land and rightful holdings are in so-called Canada.
Wow, that's
just to tie that back into your question. The way I create art is what I think is like a natural progression of my understanding of law. Like I create art as a way to connect with my traditional with my traditional territory, with my family, with my mom, with my dad, with my identity as a Xwelmewx and a Kwiis person. Xwelmewx is our word for like native person in Halkamelum, which is the language of the Stalo people. And Kwiis is the same for Nuchonov people. So it's a word for like, we're people from this land. Like we belong here. This land belongs to us and we belong to it. So I'm a Nuchonov, Kwiis, and a Xwelmewx from Stalo Nation. And that me creating things with my hands, with my mind, with my heart, it helps me to connect those natural and traditional laws and ways of life into my contemporary life. So I bring those laws, I bring those teachings, and I bring them to life through the art that I make. It's a physical manifestation of our law. So that's why
if you're not bringing them to life, I feel like they're just going to die off and people aren't going to be aware of them anymore. So
really important to me too is the use of language. So there's passive language and active language. A lot of our the way people speak about our people is we're dying off, or our language is dying, or and to me, like I really think it's important to speak actively about it. Like our people are being killed, our language is being taken from.
Let's not try and
not trying to pacify what's happening at the hands of the Canadian government.
Let's say it how it really is, really.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Wow.
So yeah, I think it's really important for me to be very active in creating art because it connects me to my mom, my dad, my culture, my identity.
Yeah. So you would say art is part of your cultural legacy then? Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. What's something people don't understand about Native youth and mental health?
I think when it comes to mental health, like growing up, I was diagnosed with like general anxiety and like severe depression when I was a youth. I think I was like 14 or 15 years old when I like really started feeling like symptoms of like what was then diagnosed as the generalized anxiety and like severe depression. And I didn't know how to deal with that.
Right.
And I was brought to like the doctor a lot, like one time I had such a bad like reaction to something that like my arms and my hands and my legs got like cold, and like even the insides of my arms started turning like green from like a lack of oxygen from this like reaction that I was having to something. And I was brought into the hospital and they sat me in the emergency room for what felt like 4 or 5 hours, like waiting to see somebody. And by the time they saw me, they were like, "Oh yeah, you're fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just go home, like rest, drink water."
Wow.
And, maybe like a week later, I had like a similar feeling, but not as bad of a reaction. And I got to see my general physician. And he then gave me that diagnosis very, very quickly, like gave me a little checklist and was like, "Okay, yeah, it looks like you have all of these like symptoms of generalized anxiety and like pretty severe depression."
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, that's what this is. Okay. Like tried to understand like what that meant. And he immediately like offered me, I think it was like Prozac or something like that.
Wow, straight away.
Yeah, right away. Like, wasn't like, "Do you want some like counseling or anything?" Like, "Yeah, do you need any support or anything?" It was just immediately like, "Oh, we're going to get you on this medication."
Wow.
And I think like, yes, like my brain chemistry, like other things were working in a way that might have been kind of like hard for me to deal with at that time. But I also was like severely underhoused.
Yeah.
I also had a very like lack of access to traditional and like healthy foods and like food at all sometimes.
Right. It's a snowball effect. What leads to this generalized anxiety and depression? It's people just think, "Oh, just put them on Prozac, be fine within a couple of weeks and you'll be good." But that's, there's a lot of things to deal with that brought you to this place. And if you're just going to hide it with some feelings or something, or take away feelings, which is what basically whatever they prescribe you with does.
That's what they were trying to do, right? They're trying to kind of like let's numb this.
Yeah.
And for me, like I understood that lack of food, that lack of safe housing, like those things were symptoms of a larger system that was put in place by the Canadian government. That reserve system that took 99.9998% of our land from us and corralled us onto these tiny, unusable pieces of land. They pushed us onto these tiny chunks of land so that they could appropriate and capitalize on the land that we held under commons as Indigenous people, that we held for thousands of years as our ancestor, as our relative, that we lived in right relationship with for thousands and thousands of years. You know, my ancestors and my relatives say since time immemorial, since before time was recorded, we've been here.
Yeah.
And those symptoms, that depression, that anxiety, coming from the lack of food, lack of water that did not exist before the creation of Canada.
Yeah.
Our people were taken care of. We had all the food we needed. And that's proven by the amount of art that we create. Like we had time in our winters. We had time in our falls. We had time, stories to travel, to visit, to live like joy-filled lives that were filled with connection. And so for me, like, I think one of the things that people don't understand about Indigenous youth and mental health is its deep-rooted connections in colonization, in imperialism, in capitalism. Those are the symptoms that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And Indigenous youth, I'm not going to mince my words, we have the highest rates of suicide in so-called Canada and so-called North America per capita. And that, to me, shows a really deep and entangled connection with colonization, capitalism, imperialism, with land theft, with abuse. Like, all of these things are symptoms of these larger systems that were brought here by colonizers. And I think that that's one of the main things that I'd like to say is like that's the connection there.
That is,
you know, like our mental health was amazing.
Yeah.
And the people who understand the effects of colonization, we can start our healing journey now. You know, I hear it takes 7 generations to heal wounds that were from trauma. You know, like if I have children in 7 more generations, finally, those effects on my DNA, on their ways that they travel through their lives will finally be healed if we can all stay on that healing path.
Yeah.
All understanding that we need to be tougher on these systems and gentler on each other. I think that is like, that's a really like important thing for me to say. And shout out Harsha Walia. She wrote a book, and is also an incredible like frontline organizer. Yeah, her book I believe is called Undoing Border Imperialism. It's a really, really amazing book, and she's the one who said those words to me, and they've resonated with me really like a lot. They've given me language that I need to talk about these systemic injustices that we're all in unconsensual relationships with. Like, I'm in an unconsensual relationship with capitalism right now.
100%.
I did not choose to have to make money to be able to survive.
I did not choose this shit.
You know, so I think that like understanding that system is what is taking our power, that first understanding allows us to start taking our power back and to imagine like a different future for all of us that is like much more joy-filled, you know, much more equitable, much more safe. Yeah.
Thank you for that. What advice would you give someone who's feeling lost and trying to find a way to channel their pain into something meaningful? Because you help us every week. We through Healing Heart, we can come in and work on something, learning something while working on something, creating something with our own hands, and knowing that there's a story behind what we're creating, and that the people before us and the people that came before you wanted this for us and to help us to get better.
I'm trying to think of my own experiences here. Like, I think one of the most grounding things that I do, you know, especially when I'm feeling lost, is like really like feeling that inhale, like allowing oxygen into my body and feeling that energy that's created by that oxygen flow through my blood to my fingertips, come back, flow down through my legs and to my knees and down to my toes. And just being like thankful in that moment, like no matter the emotion that I'm holding on to, whether that's rage or incredible grief and sadness or happiness, laughter, these full range of emotions, it doesn't matter what emotion that I'm feeling in that time. I need to be immensely thankful for the minuscule chance that I am here right now experiencing this.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what emotion it is. Like, what are the chances mathematically, spiritually, like, that I happen to be here at this point in time?
Yeah.
And once you ground yourself in that, okay, like, I'm even lucky to be experiencing this, because what are the chances? Then you can kind of pull inwards again and say, again, to yourself, to your ancestors, to the creator, whatever religion or spirituality that you come from, praying in any way that you know how, and asking for the guidance that you need to be who you want and need to be for your community, asking for that guidance, saying like, I need to be the best self I can be so I can show up for my community, so I can show up for myself, for my family. And oftentimes, like, I think that creating things like from your heart, from your experiences, from those intense emotions helps us to process and to start taking those small steps that I was talking about forward down like a healing path. You know, that path, it meanders like a valley that was cut by a river. It's never this straight and narrow path.
No.
It's always following that path that that river cut. You know, water, like a little droplet when it hits us, doesn't feel like this intense thing. But if you've ever stood inside of a river, you'll feel that pull.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen an avalanche, you see that power. And I think those tiny steps are like droplets of water, in the way that those droplets, when they add up, they create this bigger and larger thing that feels larger than life. If you see the Grand Canyon, if you see any valley here in so-called BC, they seem unimaginable. Like, how did these get here? If you're feeling stuck, just remember that tiny droplets of water carved these valleys that you see here.
Yeah.
Tiny droplets of water help to create every little bit of life that you see here on Earth. One drop of water at a time help to create the plants, the insects, our dinosaurs that used to live here before we did, like, even ourselves, like, and this water is so powerful. Like, I always think like this water's been here since life on Earth has been here, and it's been recycled over and over through oceans, through clouds, through rain and snow and ice, through those very beings I was talking about, insects and dinosaurs and birds and whales. We've all shared this water here on Earth for millions of years. And like, even if you're feeling like a little bit stuck, kind of situating yourself like where you are, okay, I'm in this giant web of life right now on Earth, and it just feels a little bit absurd sometimes, you know, and like really, again, something that you need to be thankful for. Like I was always taught, like my whole life, like when you wake up, if you open your eyes, you better immediately be thankful.
Yeah.
You know, like, doesn't matter where you're opening your eyes, be so thankful for that, like, chance to live and to grow and to like share.
Even that small first little step can impact your whole entire day incredibly. So yeah. Has art ever told you the truth for you when words couldn't?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
100%.
Tell me something about that.
A few years ago, I went through a really tough time in my life, and I lost someone who is extremely close to me. I lost a few people actually the same year. Like November, somebody, and then the end of December, somebody, 5 years ago. And I kind of like, I hit this point in my life where, you know, like I have these teachings of being thankful, but like grief can be so hard to hold on to and so hard to express.
Yeah.
And like when I heard about like the first person, it sort of felt like this like slow, like wrenching feeling like that, like it almost felt like a weight on my shoulders and my chest and like my back. Like I just felt like weighed down by it.
Yeah.
But I felt like I could still walk, you know, like I was crushed by it. But I felt like I needed to pull in words. And it was during this global pandemic that we all lived through. And I felt like I couldn't reach out for help in that November time because I'm like, okay, sure, I can like phone somebody, but I feel like I might be a weight on their shoulders. I don't want to share this weight that I'm having. I can't go see someone because I don't want to maybe get them sick. And it felt like this complex thing that I didn't know how to express, that grief of not being able to feel like I could reach out to somebody. But I always had my sketchbook. I always had my paint. You know, like I think that even when I was using dollar store paints and dollar store canvases and found objects from alleyways, and I was really, really thankful for that opportunity to be able to like express those deep emotions that I couldn't say through words to people on a piece of paper, typing on my phone, like making poems that helped me express those things verbally without actually having to say them to somebody. Yeah, for instance, like there's this one like poem I wrote, like it's called "In the Future We Belong to the Land." And it's kind of like me processing this idea of our physical bodies not always being here. And it also speaks to the politics that I have been speaking about this whole podcast as well. Like understanding that there is like a reciprocal ownership, a reciprocal relationship between myself and the land, between you and the land, between everybody here.
Yeah.
All of us belong to a place. You know, whether that's where we were born, whether that's where our ancestors are from, whether that's where our children are going to be from, we all belong to specific land. And we all belong to specific water. And that poem was me really like toying with that understanding of our physical bodies and what it means to have like ownership, quote unquote, like ownership of our body. I couldn't control when that person passed in November.
Yeah.
And I definitely couldn't control when that second close person to me passed in December. And I really needed a way to express like that grief, but also process it in a way that felt like it aligned with the teachings I had of being thankful for this existence. Because yes, like that was a grief-ridden time. It was so heavy. But I also needed to hold space for those teachings of being so thankful for every emotion, for every chance that I have to feel and to learn and to grow and to share. And so I wrote that poem, and it just sat with me for, I think, at least a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I met some folks who asked me one day, like, if I'd ever written any poetry. And I told them, yeah, I used to love it when I was in grade 8, grade 9. Like, I was huge into poetry. I loved writing poetry. I was a romantic, and it wasn't after grade 8, it wasn't until this poem I wrote in 2021 era that I wrote poetry again, and I didn't share it with anyone. I just kind of kept it to myself. And when these folks asked me if I wrote anything, they were like, "Oh, cool, you wrote. Can we hear it?" I didn't know how to respond to that. I was like, "How do I share this? This is crazy." Like I was feeling so so intense. And like, that was such a raw point in my life. I had lost 2 people that were so close to me. And this is the most raw, like, it was me on a page.
Yeah.
How do I share that? Like, I don't share that much with anybody, just speaking in casual conversation. So this poem, I shared it with them, and all of them, like, you could see emotions coming from them, like a full range of emotions I saw in these people while I was reading that poem to them. And they all thanked me afterwards for reading it. And I think that, yeah, that rawness that I was afraid to share was much easier to share with myself via that poem. And then after, a year and a half of processing that grief, of holding on to it, of allowing it to like flow through me. Because, it's one thing to hold grief, that it gets heavy.
Yeah.
You have to allow it to flow through you.
You have to, yeah, move, yeah.
And so after a year and a half of doing that, I was able to share that poem.
Wow.
And it was really an intense moment for me. Yeah. I think that, yeah, like, there was no other way I could have processed that grief at that time in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how the universe works like that. It's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and a whole body of work came through that poem, from that poem. That was like a root. I created print work, cutting linoleum. I created paintings with acrylic and watercolor. I carved jewelry from copper, silver. And I've now created a short film. As of last night at about midnight, I cut a short film that was also part of this larger body of work about belonging to land. And it all stemmed from that inability to speak about that heavy emotion, that intense emotion back, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm still feeling that, like, it feels helpful to me still, that poem, in expressing myself and feeling vulnerable enough and enough courage to share those things that I have a hard time expressing. So yeah, art is an amazing tool for expressing things that you can't fully say out loud.
I love that. And people will always be able to interpret things differently. And who are you to stop people from being able to be inspired by your beautiful work? Because you were, whatever you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I did a little acrostic poem for the magazine that we have in our Rabble Rousers. And one of the lines in it is, generational stories live in art.
Mm.
And as an Indigenous person yourself, I feel like you can expand on that for me.
Generational stories live through art. That feels like a very concise way to speak about both the cultures I come from. Like saying it all in one sentence. A lot of settlers, when they first came here, said that we didn't have a written form of language.
Wow.
And I thought that was really funny because, a lot of folks, when they speak about linguistics and about stories and about history, they kind of go back into like Sumeria and Egypt, and they have all of these, like, the first, quote unquote, again, like, written languages. And I think cuneiform, which is kind of like a series of kind of like lines that are used to create different patterns on clay tablets. And then hieroglyphs in Egypt, which are like painted and carved symbols of animal and plants and different beings. Those are often looked back to as the first forms of written language.
Mm-hmm.
And for me here, I look at that and I see a bit of like hypocrisy in their lack of understanding about our written language here on the Northwest coast of what's now called North America. we have an extremely rich and deep history of written language through the forms of art that we create here.
Yeah.
Whether that's our masks, what people call totem poles and house posts, through our painted regalias, our blankets, our boxes, our baskets, all of these things, like I was speaking of earlier, we had so much time because we were so wealthy and rich with food and the resources we needed to stay alive here.
It was all there, yeah.
We had the time to create stories and different intricate forms of written languages that people look to as our like indigenous art.
Yeah.
Our form line that we use to decorate our regalias and our boxes and our spoons and everything that we have. It shows our connection to spirit, but it's also a very plainly written language that's only understood by those who speak it. It tells you who you are. It tells you where you're from, what family you belong to, what house, what clan, what land you belong to, and what are your rights. And I think that those stories are so bound up in that artwork, are so bound up in that visual language, that unless you were raised in it, you have a hard time seeing those stories. And I think our modern indigenous artists, we do our best to share these stories now, the ones that are allowed to be shared in public. And people are starting to understand it a bit more, which I appreciate. You know, I don't feel like understood.
Yeah.
But I feel like people are starting to take those baby steps into understanding indigenous people, our stories, our written languages. Because those stories, like, they're really important, you know, like, they teach us about who we are, they ground us in this land, and they also illustrate our laws.
Our stories are the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important. And yeah, I love that. So you said generational stories live through art. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Tell us about a couple of your art pieces. Favorite. What's your, any projects you're working on right now? Any finished projects you just finished up? What's going on with Kwiis?
Last night at about 2 a.m, I submitted a short film, an 8-minute film that I've been working on for the last like 6 or 8 months. It was an interesting experience for me. It's a semi brand new material that I'm exploring, film, even though it was a digital film. I'm looking at it as a material. I'm looking at it as something that I can experiment with and try to understand, just how I would understand paper and pen, paintbrush and paint, inks, wood, like sculpture, all these things. Like I look at these materials I work with and I try to express the spirit that I see within it. And so the film that I worked on, it feels like a retrospective, a exploration of my past year of learning how to carve cedar.
Okay.
And the continuation of that understanding of belonging to the land. So I really tried to slow down my process. This film was actually due in December. I'm really happy that the people I'm working with and submitting it to were okay with me taking that time I needed, because if I submitted it in December, I would not have been happy with what I created.
Yeah.
I would not have been satisfied with that story I was able to tell.
Yeah.
You know, the last shot that I needed, I filmed less than a week ago. So that story wouldn't have been complete if it wasn't for their willingness to work with me on Indian time.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, like my understanding of like what I just said, like Indian time is that you're gonna get there when you're supposed to, where you're supposed to be at any point in time. You know, like say you have a thing that you're supposed to be at 3 o'clock, but you show up at 3:30. It's like, there's a reason why you showed up at 3:30.
Yeah.
It wasn't just because you didn't feel like getting there on time. There was other things that you needed, other places you needed to be to fulfill other obligations or needs, or these tiny choices you make in your day-to-day life have a big impact. And yeah, I don't I don't live on colonial time.
Yeah.
Like my younger sibling says, I live in time. So I love that film that I created. It really feels like that rawness that I'm not able to speak in public, that I'm not able to share person to person. But I can create something through my like video, my film, that is hard to express for me. And so that's one thing that I just finished up that I'm like very, very proud of. And I can't wait to share with the world. I think in the middle of March sometime, it'll be released at the Polygon Gallery. And I think,
wow, that's going to be exciting.
So I'm excited for that. I'll definitely invite the Rabble Rousers down there.
Sounds good. We went to an art gallery and you had your a bunch of stuff posted up. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was the Bill Reed Gallery exhibition. It was called Vital Signs. So I believe Aaliyah Pouvard and my friend Amelia, they created this idea for vital signs. Vital signs, like obviously in your human body, is like your heartbeat.
Yeah.
The amount of oxygen that you have in your blood. Being able to see, touch, smell, hear, feel. And they created this idea that our land has vital signs. And that we're currently going through a time of like great ecological change that's started by us. Like there's this thing called the Anthropocene extinction. And Anthropocene is like meaning it's like the age of the humans. But we're in the 6th largest extinction event here on Earth. And it's been caused by human actions. And to me, like, again, that's not because I'm driving my car. Yeah. No, it's because of these systems I spoke about earlier of colonization, imperialism, capitalism, patriarchy. These systems are the reason why our world is going through this extinction. And Amelia and Aaliyah, they saw this and they saw an opportunity for Indigenous artists to speak about their experiences with our land, or our experiences with our land.
Yeah.
And there was film, there was photography, painted works, jewelry, print work, fashion, that was all incorporated into this larger vital signs show. And all of the pieces that were submitted had to do with our personal experiences with the changing land that we're from. My friend Jasper created some beautiful paintings. They're from up towards Lytton area. And he showed that like that burning that happened, I believe it was in 2022 or something, the major fires within the last few years here. The entire city burned down in a couple of hours. Yeah, it was bad. And Rebecca Baker Grenier like used the chips from her brother's mask carving. He carved cedar masks. And when you carve cedar, chips of wood come off. Nice, like small chips. And she created a corset out of it that she used as a way to speak about the dwindling cedar stalks that we have all along the coast. And like our masks, our canoes, our houses, our clothing prior to colonization and still are made of cedar. And so she spoke to that by creating a corset, which is like a modern interpretation of some traditional regalia, to speak to that. My cousin Jade Baxter, she's also in Xwelmewx, and she created a short film about those fires that happened up in Lytton as well.
Yeah.
Really, really beautiful, like poetic film of her experience there. And people would constantly ask, like, why wouldn't you leave?
Yeah.
And her question is why would you?
Yeah, right? Why? Yeah.
Like, she's so connected there. That's her place. That's where her ancestors and she is from. So she said, why would you leave? It's like who I am. This is, yeah. Even if it's burned to a crisp, like this is still where I'm from.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful. Then Kaylee Spitzer, she did some really beautiful photographs of like high tanning and fish harvesting in Dene and I believe Secwepemc territory.
Wow.
And they're just beautiful interpretations of...
They were, all the pieces that we saw in there were very nice, very beautiful.
Gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
My work, I actually spoke about it already today, was based in that, like, in the future, like, we belong to the land. And that understanding that we're part of the land, that's where we come from. In my mother's language, Xwelmewx, we have this word, and it's tamuch, soch tamuch. And that's our land, our territory, the place where we come from. And there's this root word in there, much. There's another word that has that root in it that speaks volumes to the way my ancestors saw the world. And it's muchia. Now, muchia. So muchia means your belly button.
Okay.
You know, and as a child, like, I loved that word. I thought it was so funny, you know. I'd always say muchia and just start laughing, you know, because I loved the word. And to me as an adult, it finally clicked with me. I was like, wait, like muchia, like tamuch. Your muchia, your belly button, is your first connection with your mother. It brings you air, it brings you nutrients, it nurtures you while you grow into a human being who can then hopefully survive on Earth. And my ancestors were genius in the way that they understood our connection to land as our physical mother that provides us with that warmth, with that oxygen, with the nourishment we need to stay alive. And so this understanding that I'm trying to push forward in my poem, painting, print word, jewelry that I submitted was that connection to our mother, the land that we come from, soch tamuch. And that obligation we have to be in the right relationship with our soch tamuch, with our earth, with our mother, with our land. And yeah, I think that was a very beautiful art show to be a part of. I don't want to be in art shows just for the sake of it. I'm not out here to like just show things that I created just because. Like, I like being able to share about why the work was created, about the impact I'm hoping that work will have, as well as to create engagement with the public and our community about why I care about creating artwork, why I care about my land, why I care about my language, culture, and laws.
Yeah.
And that exhibit was beautiful. It was really fun.
It really was.
Yeah. That was my first time showing my work publicly, my painted works, my jewelry, and my print work.
Wow.
In such a large gallery like that. It was a really beautiful time, and I'm really glad that you guys got to come and check it out.
There'll be many more times. That was very encouraging, inspiring, and eye-opening. I find it really, really heartwarming how Native people, Indigenous people, they're not wasteful. They're very, I'm having the thought, they're very like considerate of the, like I said, Mother Nature, the earth, where you're from, just understanding, life. And I find that very needed. I think that's what people need. Yeah. I think that's what people need to help. I don't know, just to help them see things the way that we see them, help them to understand, help them to feel differently. Yeah, help them to overcome whatever it is they need to overcome. A little bit being in the now and feeling alive is very important. Yeah.
You ever heard of the word Sankofa?
Sankofa? Yeah, I don't think I have.
I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe it's a Yoruba word.
All right.
I think it's from Africa, and it means like to move forward, you have to be able to look back. Like, you have to look back on these things that we've experienced in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But also in our ancestors' lifetime, be able to move forward in like a good way. And yeah, I think that's a really beautiful thing. I saw a exhibit of the same name at the Museum of Anthropology maybe 3.5 or 4 years ago now, and it was a life-changing experience for me because I connected with like a really beautiful soul there that day. Made an awesome friend. My friend Sierra Tassie Baker, she's a Squamish and Kwakwakiwok. She lives just in the North Shore, like amazing family of artists and very, very intelligent person. I ran into her randomly. I was on this like bike ride. One of those days where I didn't know what to do. I was having heavy feelings. So I just like would hop on my bike and I'd just ride and listen to music. And I ended up at the Museum of Anthropology. And so I walked in and, you know, got my little entrance, and I walked down and I was heading into like the main hall and I hear these drum beats.
Yeah.
Just going hard. And I was like, wow, like what's going on down there? And I go and I look, and there was some amazing African drummers there just playing their hearts out, and they were dancing and drumming. And for me, like drumming is a very like powerful medicine, and dancing is a very powerful medicine, something that helps us heal, something that helps us build our spiritual strength, our physical strength as well. But for me, it's very spiritual. And so I see them dancing and drumming, and I'm like, this is like what I needed.
Yeah.
This is the exact medicine that I needed.
That's the universe taking care of you right there. That's that Indian time you were talking about.
Exactly.
And that is so inspiring.
Yeah. So watching them drum and sing and dance, and I was there by myself, obviously. Like I biked by myself there, and I was wandering through the exhibit after that opening.
Yeah.
And it just so happens it was the last day of this exhibit called Sankofa. And it was just beautiful, like stunning pieces of art, photographs, textiles, videography, paintings, sculpture, all these beautiful expressions of African and diaspora art. And as I was looking at some small metal sculptures, Sierra Tassie Baker walks up to me. She's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, holy, like, haven't seen you in a while. Like, our parents were friends, so we've seen each other since we were kids.
Yeah.
And she has with her 2 people, and one of them I became really close friends with. She's also got an amazing podcast. You should check her out. Her name is Divine Indemnier.
Divine Indemnier?
Indemnier, yeah. A very, very powerful speaker, teacher, architect, like wonderful human being. And I think that chance connection that I made and like made this awesome friend was such a beautiful outcome of that, like me trying to take care of myself that day. Like I had so much to do, like, but I was on Indian time.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm going for a bike ride.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed. Like I need to take care of myself. And so I biked until I literally got to the end of the seawall. And then I biked up a hill, and then I ended up at the Museum of Anthropology.
Wow.
And yeah, I made that amazing connection that day. And I also got to learn a little bit about like African culture, and got to experience that culture firsthand, and make a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, yeah, I don't know. All that is to say is that like that one choice to like take care of myself in that way that day, like really like felt beautiful, and like, yeah, it's been a good time.
Is there anything you want to specifically say to anyone? Anything specifically on your heart you want someone who's listening to our podcast to hear?
Yeah. There's always going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
Daily, by the minute, by the year, by the decade. But you make the earth better by being here. You make somebody's life better for being here. And every day that you choose to learn and to grow and to share what you know, you make your ancestors proud. And, you know, one day, if you're lucky enough and, you know, you stay on that path, like maybe you can be a good ancestor too. But for now, you make the earth a better place.
Is there anything you want to say to perhaps your younger self, maybe future you?
Oh yeah, because I am younger self to future me. Exactly. I don't know. I guess like to younger me, like saying it to me now, honestly, younger me speaking to me,
Yeah.
like take the time to look around and be thankful because I'm living a life that I could only dream of when I was living in a transition house with my mom and sister that I technically wasn't even allowed to live in because I was,
Oh yeah, because like 14 or 15-year-old guy. Yeah, women, dude, usually doesn't slide.
exactly, yeah. So when I was living in one of those transition houses for I don't even know how many times in my life, like I couldn't even dream of the life that I'm living out right now. And so like I need to be really thankful for where I'm at with my ability to create things, with my ability to like house and feed myself and to share with others. Like I always wanted to be a teacher, and I took a path that, like that river we spoke about at the beginning, meandered all over the place, but all paths all lead back to that ocean. So that goal that you have might take you a lifetime to finish, might take you decades, days, weeks, years, whatever it is. But always keeping in mind like what you care about in your heart. And every small step you take towards that is still moving you in that direction. And I think that, yeah, just like those droplets of water that eventually carved those great valleys, I need to look around and say, hey, like this has been a lot of like tiny droplets of waters, but I got a tiny valley going now.
Yeah.
Good hand.
That's thankful. That's encouraging. That's encouraging. Thank you for that. All right, folks, you heard it here straight from Kwiis himself. Thank you for being on the podcast, Kwiis. It was a pleasure to have you.
For having you, Luigi.
Yeah, thanks. Shout out to, is there anybody you want to shout out? Any?
Shout out my younger sibling, Xwelmewx, my mom, Kwiis, my cousins, Asa and DJ, my partner, Kai.
There you go. You want to plug in your anything? Spell, find you. Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram at Kwiis.Hamilton. That's KWIIS Hamilton, HAMILTON. Yeah, you can find me there. I post about politics. I post about my art making. I post about kind of like public art projects that I do. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
This was good. I appreciate you for having us on. Shout out to the Rabble Rousers for putting us together. Shout out to Coast for putting the Rabble Rousers together. Yeah, thank you to everybody who participated in this, and we will see you next episode.
Nice. Thanks, guys.